describe Galore for us.
Well, it's a film that is very much seen through the eyes of a central character, Billie, played by Ashleigh Cummings. And it's kind of a love song to that age and stage in your life when you kind of live for intensity and experience, when you're sort of chasing love or desire or, you know, that night's party. But it's set on the suburban fringe of Canberra in a place called Tuggeranong, where it's, you know, the bush meets these sort of very ordered suburbs. So yeah, it's a fairly lyrical experience of what it is like to be growing up, but it's also very much about very adult ideas of loyalty and betrayal and first love and sex. And
Well, Lily, what's the main theme of the film, do you think?
I don't necessarily think there's a main theme of the film. I feel like it's sort of this journey, this really intimate, clumsy, claustrophobic, messy tangle of young human beings just indulging in life and, I don't know, making mistakes and just loving in all sorts of forms, really. It's not, I don't think there's any, this is the pivotal point and this is what I learned from this film. I feel like it's just kind of life, nature and behaviour.
What about you, Toby?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I don't think it's a film you need to think about too much and need to make complex. I think you need to feel it, and that's really like it's the confusion of being a teenager and things life throws at you, and having to surrender to the confusion and just sit in it, which I think is really, really important. That the film conveys about the immensity and the intensity of life, especially during your early years.
Why is the film set around the times of a major bushfire?
Well, we were very wary. We didn't want it to be like a glib allegory, which it absolutely wasn't. The idea was much more so that I love films that are set in really specific places and times. You know, these characters for me are shaped by where they have grown up, and that place is absolutely scarred by that experience. And so we just thought that to place this film in that month prior to that bushfire brought the characters very much alive to us. But the idea was also that I suppose it actually was very influenced by a doco I made just after the bushfires. I went back to Canberra and filmed a whole lot of young kids who were in the punk scene there, and they were all talking about what mattered to them about the fires, and they weren't worried about all the stuff that all the adults were. They weren't worried about losing their houses, or they were just suddenly like terrified for their friends. They were reevaluating their relationships, their love, and those ideas and themes just really kind of came back to me a few years later when I was rewriting Galore, and I was like, actually, there's something about that, the idea of a catastrophe haunting the kind of edges of your vision, that for Billie, who's so myopic, she's so obsessed with her friendship with Laura, or her, this sort of desire she's got for Danny, that she barely even looks up and registers what everyone else is worried about. So, yeah, that was very
Now,
important.
Lily and Toby, how did Rhys Graham get these really sensitive, touching performances out of you? They're very naturalistic. How did he do that?
One thing that I think I can say for all of us that I haven't experienced in a pre-production process is we spent actually 2 weeks in Canberra prior to the shoot, where we were in a block of flats. We all had a bike each. We were left to our own devices, and for a couple of hours a day, we'd all kind of recruit together and run over the scenes, but not necessarily actual dialogue or script. It was more just creating a true world for these characters and improvisation. So when we jumped on set, it was kind of like this warped reality that we'd actually immersed ourselves into. Like, constantly we were talking to kids around the area. It was almost like I haven't had that kind of commitment to a role before, and I don't think many young actors get that opportunity as well. It's kind of everything's thrown together, and then all of a sudden you're a part of this big production. Whereas this film was quite slow and gentle, and I think, which is quite, obviously sort of like leaked into the film overall for all of us in our performances, hopefully.
Yeah, I thought it was, you really had to, because Canberra is such a specific energy, there's such a specific energy, especially in Tuggeranong. So for each of us, I thought it was, you have your process to get into character. So for mine, it was going down the skate park, or just skating around the place, or just doing this and that. And I think Licky, made friends with a bunch of Tongans and went out with them a lot. And just did just little things for our own process. But then also we just went around and did all these different activities together, and it was really about just getting the dynamic, not as actors and as characters, and it was really
and as friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Rhys, so is what they're saying absolutely true?
I think it is, yeah. But I think also, I always knew that because the film is so much about intimacy, we tried to create this sort of incredibly intimate place between these relationships, and it's almost claustrophobic that the film was going to live or die as to whether that was authentic. That you had to believe that these loves were possible, that friendship was as intense and all important as it was. So we just tried to create a really intimate place for these guys where they could do really good work. But the thing is that each of them the four of them are freakishly intelligent and complex in the way they approach their performance, and yet completely intuitive. So that kind of, there was never, we didn't have to overanalyze things. We just did lots of impros to build up the characters and who they were. And then when they come onto set, every time I was bewildered and amazed by what they did. I think also the four of them, it sounds like I'm just being flattering them, but I'm absolutely not. They all are very lovely people, and what they did was, between the four of them, and with Maya staying as well, she also, as a kind of maternal figure, just created an environment where they could do better work. They never had to be guarded. They could be as vulnerable as they needed to be, and often in this film, that's there's a lot of scenes where they have to be really vulnerable, and they're quite raw performances, but I think they made that possible for each other as well as that.
Okay, now it is a really beautifully made, beautiful looking, lyrical film with really wonderful performances. Having said that, why didn't you just go ahead and make a teen movie for a big market? You know that you could have done that. You had the talent there, you had a good setting, good storyline. You could have just made a teen film, a conventional teen film. You chose not to do that. Why?
Because I think that, in a way, I've been disappointed by teen films that sell the experience short. The thing is, it can be a fantastic genre when you're looking at, a comedic performance, or you're telling a story. You sell it for laughs, but the thing about, Australian dramas about teenagers have been amazingly simplistic, and I think, culturally we tend to sell kids short in every level. Sell their intelligence short, their complexity short. And the thing is, your loves can be, most people know that when you're a teenager, your love can be just as intense then as it is later on. Your sexual encounters can be just as, complex and weird and layered as they are later on. Your friendships are usually much more intense and much more important than they are later on. Yet we get these weird coming of age stories where it's just like, oh, here's me reconciling with my parents. When I was 17, with no disrespect to my parents, they were barely on my radar, I was totally immersed in the world of everyone who was my age. And ultimately, also, it's about what kind of cinema you want to see. And we ended up with a big crew of very passionate people who wanted to make the kind of film they wished they had seen when we were 17, and also one that just spoke a bit more authentically and truly to us.
Just quickly, Lily and Toby, what's the one thing about the film that you think it gets right about teenagers? Because you guys are teenagers, actually playing teenagers. Normally in a teenage film, as Rhys would know, the teenagers are usually played by people in their 30s.
That's right. That's right.
I don't think there's a distinction between playing a teenager or playing an adult. I think it's the same thing, really. I think just, as you were saying, it's the circumstance that kind of dictates. So where these characters have grown up and that sort of thing. I think when you're young, there is that complete disconnection from parental guidance. So you're just together and you're there to have fun and you're there to drink and smoke and get wasted. But when you're in that, you're developing all these different kind of and discovering emotions for the first time, and you're finding the themes of identity and belonging. And I think that was something that hit me in the film, was just that kind of the real just confusion of who you are, who your loyalties lie with, and where your love's going to take you. And it was just yeah.
I think for me, when I read the script and fell in love with the idea of being a part of a project like this, because I don't think they come around as much as they should. I think especially for young Australian actors, I feel like the opportunities and it's not as embraced in Australia. Like when we went to Berlin, the amount of young people that showed up to that cinema and were asking like incredibly intellectual questions, and and also just about the incredible landscape in Australia. But for me, it was the subtlety of the script, and what stood out to me is just the subtleties where it just stays true to human behaviour, with no giving into the idea of like, this is the line that you need to hear at this point, or it's just like heart and stupidity and indulging in emotions that some people shut off or like cut themselves short of. It's just like,
I really liked someone at the Q&A last night when the film was on. Someone asked why the funeral wasn't the climax, and that was really I loved your point about did you say that there was you went for a few funerals back in the day and that was like the least?
Yeah, well, it's just like the dramatic convention is always like the funeral's the big moment. There's always like an amazing kind of monologue, and everyone kind of, that's the moment of drama. Whereas from, I don't know, having gone to too many funerals, it's like the funeral is often this kind of like thing that has to be organised and you get through it. And of course it's emotional, but the big stuff, the messy stuff, the human stuff comes later on. So